Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, taking another fun and exciting episode for you guys this Friday because we're going to be taking a revisited look at Evil Knight on the Konami 3DO M2. And we're going to be doing it in 4K because I am still cleaning up and organizing my arcade storage closet, taking out some of the rarest and most exotic PCBs I have. And you know damn well if I want to do that, I'm going to get another capture and talk about Evil Knight one more time. I know this gets often referred to as a House of the Dead clone, but it is a spiritual sequel to Crypt Killer, which was a PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 1 arcade based game, and this was in development right at the tail end of when the House of the Dead came out. So honestly, it is just a coincidence. Horror light gun games are all the rage in this era. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But honestly, Evil Knight, just like Total Vice, the video I did previously, to me is one of those perfect games. And it's not just because it's on the 3DO M2, but I readily admit that I am biased. I've loved this hardware. I spent a lot of time collecting, preserving, and researching it. But this is every bit as good as the House of the Dead ever was. It is a harder horror theme, and you're going to see a little bit more of gore and violence in this one, but it does kind of still have that House of the Dead edge as far as the violence is concerned. And this is just, again, in a genre I absolutely love. If you know anything about me or the channel, you know I love arcade light gun games, and I love when they're married to exotic, random, and rare 3D hardware. So Evil Knight, of course, is going to do it for me. And now do be aware there is a version of this game called Hell Knight. It is just a different title, but it's the same game, and it has nothing to do with the PlayStation 1 horror game Hell Knight, also from Konami. It gets searches really confusing. But you get a decent amount of story in this game, and it does kind of adhere semi-closely to Crypt Killer, so again, pseudo-sequel. But right off the top, I absolutely love the zombie designs and how destructible they are. You can blow heads off, you can blow holes in torsos, you can shoot meat off the bone, and you'll see some enemies trying to hit you with axes with just their arm bone exposed, nothing else around it. I even love the pajama skeleton zombie there. I think he's wearing his jammies from Halloween. But these are just the type of games that were huge in the 90s, and unfortunately Evil Knight did not succeed in the arcade. So if you know of where there is a cabinet for this, leave me a comment down below. I know of exactly one of them in Japan. Otherwise, the rest of these boards now are in private collectors' hands. I have 2 of them, and I know of about 5 more that exist, one of which is in my house right now for repair from another collector. But even the snake boss here, absolutely incredible, and I love that you have the full moon coming through the roof. All of the art design on this game has really nice touches to it. There's a ton of detail in the texture work, and the models are absolutely awesome as far as horror is concerned. And I love that this snake just basically explodes in half, shooting chunks everywhere, and this ball and chain zombie, when you kill him, splits down the middle, exposing his ribcage and his spine. This area definitely, though, does feel like it is at least a little bit inspired by the House of the Dead. But again, zombies at the dinner table just eating meat that's clearly not from another zombie. That is human meat, of course. Just is 100% a horror trope that just 100% works. Now, as you see the enemies here, I just love the overall designs of them. You have enemies with giant chainsaws, giant drills, big scythes and sickles, everything you would want out of a horror game. And it definitely takes some inspiration from movies just like Total Vice before it. If that's not just Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't know who it is. And I love that he picks up smaller scrub zombies and throws them at you in midair. You have to get about 4 or 5 bullets into them so they will explode. Now this game does have a power shot mechanic as well. If I tilt the gun up, you're going to see the little meter in the bottom left hand corner charge up until you get a more powerful bullet. Honestly, I don't really like that playstyle, but you'll see it come into effect a few times here. It kind of just takes enough time so that you put yourself in a situation where you take damage and end up at a continue earlier. You will see that there are some invulnerability frames here though on the boss where you just can't hit him whatsoever. So as much as you shoot and you unload that clip onto him, he's not going to die until the pre-scripted event. But again, this has just been stage 1. This game is 32 minutes of action-packed, awesome light gun gaming goodness, and again, it is just one of those very special games to me. And the best part is, because it is Konami, you know it's got an awesome horror soundtrack, so I'm going to let you listen to it in just a moment, but be aware you may hear a little bit of hum in the audio source. When the disc is spinning up, some of that comes through on the ground channel, and there really isn't anything you can do about it, but here is the soundtrack. It's eerie, it's good, and I hope you enjoy it. super fun soundtrack, and if you didn't notice there, I just shot a doorknob off this door. There are multiple doors in this game where the doorknob will be a 3D polygonal model versus a 2D sprite, and I just shot a key on top of that desk as well. You need to access these secret rooms, get the keys, and take the right path if you want to see the good ending, which is what I'm going to bring you through here. But again, I love that the snake boss is back. Now is more of a skeleton model, and he busts through that roof like the Kool-Aid Man coming to bring you a cold cup of purple. And again, these are just the things I live for in arcade games. I love the spectacle, I love the overall design, and again, I love the graphical aesthetic. I'm not saying that the 3DO M2 was as powerful as Dreamcast. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to say that if you got this in your house in 1997, you would have been blown away, because this is something that the Sega Saturn, PlayStation 1, or Nintendo 64 just could not do whatsoever, because not only are you seeing these graphics on screen, it is running at a perfect frame rate the entire time with absolutely no slowdown whatsoever, and the graphical stylings and the overall vibe and atmosphere just work. Now this game isn't as dark in the blacks as something like the House of the Dead that may be down to the 3D2 display technology with the Bulldog ASIC. It may just be down to the graphical style that Konami chose when they were working on the art here. So as violent and gory as this game is, it is overall just a bit brighter and lighter, and again, that's just kind of the 3DO M2 look. But if you thought you were done with that gigantic snake, you were wrong. He pops through the wall one more time just to lead you down through the floor and into a different area of this mansion. And it is kind of fun, if you want to play this game, to play Crypt Killer first to get the overall story, so when you come into Evil Night, you'll understand just how entwined these games are. And I do love that zombie there with that big scythe and that trench coat just blowing a hole through his torso works. Or these what I assume to be rats or ferrets, maybe there's some sort of guinea pig hopping towards you, just squeaking the entire time. And of course you got the hunchback zombie holding his candle as he strolls merrily along the way down this room. And you'll see that we find a ladder going down into the basement area of this house. And I don't know who the architect is, but the layout is absolutely confusing, but it is a video game, so we don't really care. You'll see there, when you're not shooting at enemies in these screen transitions, you can hold the firearm in the up position, and a mercury switch makes a connection to charge that charge shot. But honestly, you could just kill the same zombie with 3 trigger pulls, so I don't really recommend using that. Now as we move on to the next boss here, this giant lanky zombie running towards you with a giant steel ball in his hand. Almost feels like he's doing some dribbling crossover in basketball. It's so much fun, it's such a spectacle, and I do love it. And you'll see here that the head is the weak spot, and unlike the House of the Dead, Evil Night does not hold your hand. It's never going to tell you a boss's weak spot. You need to figure it out, and he will use that steel ball to protect his head once he gets underneath half of a life bar. Evil Night is not an easy game. It's been a few years since I played it, but honestly, it is one of those games you're going to have to get a lot of practice to be able to get that 1cc. And the best part is there's multiple branching paths in the game, and when you start on the first level, you get course A, B, and C to select from. I'm playing course B, at least in the beginning here, and that is because it's the only way to get the good end of the game. If you start with A or C, normal is the best you can do, but there's a ton of replayability in Evil Night, and that is down to the fact that Konami had a contract with Matsushita that every single arcade game they were released would get ported to the home console. Obviously the home console never happened, so this is about as much gaming as you're going to ever do on the 3DO M2, but the good thing is it's absolutely outstanding. And again, that model there, I just love the overall art style of this game. It's just long enough to give you a ton of fun, but it ends right around the time that you feel like you should go do something else, because there really isn't any light gun game that's good for over like 30-35 minutes. And you'll see here as we come up to this gate, there is a padlock, and you can shoot that off just like you could shoot certain doors in the House of the Dead. But if you shoot this padlock, you are guaranteed you're going to lose the good ending. You need to carefully shoot around that zombie, because we need to go to a specific room and collect a specific item, or else we're not going to be able to see the good end of the game. So it's very tricky on the developer's part to put that padlock right in the middle of your screen, and you have no idea that you need to shoot around it. But of course, I played this game dozens of times now, so I am aware of that. But I'll give you one more sound sample, including some of the voice acting, because you know it has that classic 90s jank I know and love, and I'll be right back.
What is this place?
Was that guy snooping around?
Amazing music and awesome 90s cheese voice acting. Now we move on to this gigantic sewer alligator here, probably just playing off the myth of people flushing baby alligators down their toilets when they get too big, and there being alligators under the sewers of New York, even though I have no idea where this game actually takes place. But it's one more awesome boss fight in an absolutely amazing game. Now the weird thing is, and we have data mined the disc to find out, and there is nothing else on there, is you get certain keys and items in the game that you never actually use. It seems like maybe there was more planned for Evil Knight, maybe on that home console release, because the cabinet artwork does talk about a perfect ending, and there are a few unused audio tracks on the disc that never play in the game, but through data mining trying to find any additional information, this game as it sits right now, there's nothing hiding in it that anyone's been able to find, and that just is because there is nothing hiding in it. Must have been a planned feature that got cut for time towards the end. But as we go down into the caverns here, I love these enemies, not the cicadas, but the actual wraiths just flying towards you. The transparencies on them look absolutely spectacular, just showing how good the 3DO M2 was visually. Now I understand if you weren't alive in the early 90s when we were playing Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, or even PlayStation 1 or Saturn, you might not be able to recognize just how much of a leap this is over that hardware, but if you played 3D games back in the day, you would see it, and that bone in that skeleton right there in the flannel being exposed does take a decent amount of computational and modeling power to be able to have that amount of damage on screen at once in real time, and you get a decent amount of enemies in the game. And if you do a 2-player mode or a 3-player mode, you're going to see even more, because this game does accommodate for 3 players, and if you play as the second player, you get a shotgun versus a pistol, which gives you a different gameplay style with the pump action. I have all 3 of them in my collection, but honestly I just prefer player 1 as the handgun. It just has the gameplay mechanic that I do enjoy, and you'll see here that there's some zombie models in the game that are only going to show up once in particular areas. The developers and artists tried to cram in as much detail, and every single section of this house and the caverns underneath it and the graveyard that we're going to have their own unique look, charm, and flair. And you'll see I took another continue there. You can 100% just shoot the heads off of zombies, and if you don't do enough damage to the body, they are still going to come towards you. I think it's a really nice touch that even without their head, they still pose a danger, which is not what you would expect for zombie lore or for an arcade light gun game. And there is a little bit of an Egyptian theming going on here too, which is a carryover from Crypt Killer. So when people say this is just a blatant The House of the Dead clone, remember Crypt Killer existed as well, so it makes total sense that Konami would follow up with another game in that thematic franchise. And you'll see here now that we're into the cavern, we're finally going to get to the ultimate boss in this game, and I will say that the boss battle with him is quite hard. It might be even a little bit cheap. But one more 30-second sound sample, because the soundtrack in this game is so varied, unique, and fun. I want you to get a good sense of how it sounds, and I'll come back, show you the ending, and tell you a little bit more about the history of the M2. But enjoy.
There's the way out.
Hurry up!
Hope Liv is still alright.
It was super convenient of the bad guy in his zombie RB to be able to leave a little bit of a ladder there, or just some handholds for us to crawl out of that well and into the cemetery. All jokes aside, it's just a thing in game design. You have to get them up there somewhere, so it just has to exist. And again, in the cemetery, you're going to see some zombie models that you haven't seen the entire game. They just put that much effort and love into this one, and that's why I am so happy to be able to play this game when I want. I wish all of you could play it as well. The good thing is it does emulate in MAME. It is not perfect, and the sound can be a little bit weird. You're not going to get a full frame rate out of it, but you can experience it enough to understand what the game offers. And I just wish this was successful in arcades, because maybe Konami would have made a sequel to it. Although if you've never heard of or played Warzade, there are a little bit of connections between that game and Evil Knight. It's more of a World War II skeleton shooting game, if you can believe it or not, but there are some enemy designs in there that make me think that some of the same developers worked on those games. But one day I'll do a video on Warzade as soon as I get a medium resolution monitor. But again, I just love the 3DO M2, and I'd wish it had come to home consoles, but I'm so glad that Konami did make 5 arcade games for this thing, and I wish Capcom had finished up with their Power Stone development on the M2, so we could have had a version of that as well, because it was in development on this board before it moved over to Dreamcast and Naomi. But again, these are just exceedingly rare boards. But funny enough, a friend of mine, Multi-Brawler, one of the moderators from my Discord, has a cabinet for this, and he only lives about 15 miles away from me. And that is because Konami's distribution in North America was right outside of Chicago back in the day. So this was a test area for cabinets. So if something was rare from Konami but in the US, odds are it was probably in the Chicagoland area or the Midwest, and maybe a few on the coast. But we basically have the boss on the run here. It's a multi-stage affair, and it is again a blast. This is why I love collecting arcade hardware. I don't own stuff like Mortal Kombat 2. I don't go out and get boards for ghouls and ghosts. I spend my time, energy, and money on collecting these weird esoteric 3D arcade boards because they deserve more love, and for the most part, the only way to actually play the games is to find the real hardware, and in the 90s, a lot of this was a failure, and you didn't really see much distribution. But short of that, that is Evil Knight. Tell me down below if you've ever played it, or if you're going to go play it MAME after this video. But we saved the day, we are done, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.